Hello friends, I am Arpit and I am here with today's analysis. Today is 21st of September and we are going to cover three very important topics in news. The three topics, first is the US Fed rates unchanged. US Fed rates are similar to the repo rates in India. US Federal Reserve is the central bank in USA, like RBI is in India. Now RBI is responsible for tackling inflation in India by adjusting the repo rates. Having said that, RBI can increase the repo rate if inflation is more, decrease it if inflation is less. Similarly, this activity is also undertaken by the US Federal Reserve. It increases the Fed rates if inflation is more, decreases it when it is less. But this time, during its monetary policy rollout, the Fed rates have been unchanged. What implications does it have on India? We will be discussing in this particular topic. Then the next topic which we are going to discuss is the delimitation of constituencies. Why we are going to discuss this? Because the Parliament, while passing the Women Reservation Bill for reservation in the Parliament and the state legislative assemblies, have said that this bill will be passed now but will not be implemented before 2029 because we need to carry out the delimitation exercises before that. And delimitation exercises will depend upon the data which will be enumerated after the census. The census which is delayed, it had to be released in 2021 but it is delayed, and when the findings will be released, the next Delimitation Commission or the next delimitation has to sit in 2026. So after 2026 only this will be happening, and the next general elections after 2026 is the 2029 elections. And here an attached topic is the census. How the census is calculated, which body is responsible, the constitutional and legal provisions for the census, and can actually Women's Reservation Bill, which is obviously attached to these now, delimitation will happen only when the census findings will be there, or delimitation happens on the findings of the next census after it is formed. So can this happen? The Women Reservation Bill can happen in 2029 or not? This is a big question, or it will be further delayed. As of now, as per the provisions of the bill, it is clear that in the next coming general elections of 2024, women reservation is not going to be applicable because this bill will be implemented after the Delimitation Commission sits, which is 2026. However, the opposition is demanding that it should be immediately implemented. So, we will look into these details. US Federal Reserve keeps the interest rates unchanged. US Federal Reserve is the central bank of USA, just like we have the RBI as the central bank in India. US Federal Reserve is responsible for maintaining the inflationary levels in USA, just like RBI is responsible in India. US Federal Reserve maintains inflation by adjusting the policy interest rates, just like RBI does in India. We call it repo rate here also. Now, US Federal Reserve adjusting the federal rates will definitely have implications all over the world. On India also, it will have implications. Having said that, if US Federal Reserve increases the interest rate, increase in interest rate only happens when inflation is there. Then this increase in interest rate will make the financial instruments in United States of America more attractive. People will park their money in those financial instruments. As a result, the money in circulation in the US economy will reduce and inflation will be tackled. Now the financial instruments in USA will be attractive, and those will be attractive not only for the citizens of USA but citizens worldwide. So those foreign investors that have those who have parked their money in multiple countries like India, what they'll do, they'll pick up their money from here and they'll invest it in the US. As a result, we will be left with less dollars. As a result, rupee will weaken. As a result, our imports will get expensive. This is the connection between US Federal Reserve's interest rate changes and the economy of India. So let us look into this. US Fed is the central bank of USA. Just like RBI in India, US Fed is also responsible for maintaining inflation levels in US. What is interest rate? It is similar to repo rate, that is the rate at which central banks issues loans to the scheduled commercial banks. Now we should understand this. First of all, why these rates are adjusted? Because we need to tackle inflation. Why inflation is there? Because either supply side is impacted or demand side is impacted. Supply is less, it will cause inflation. Demand is more, it will cause inflation. When will demand be more? It will be more when money in circulation is more. People are having more money in their hands, they will invest, they will spend. And this will increase the demand of the products and hence prices of the products will increase, causing inflation. Now, a way to tackle this increased money supply with the central banks is that increase the policy interest rates. What are policy interest rates? Those are those interest rates at which the central bank issues loans to the scheduled commercial banks. Now, central bank in case of India is RBI, scheduled commercial banks in case of India, SBI, ICICI, HDFC, and all these are scheduled commercial banks. Now, in this situation, if the scheduled commercial banks want to take loan from the central bank, then that loan has become expensive because in the case of inflation, the interest rates will be increased by the central bank. So these scheduled commercial banks, they will look for other avenues. They will look for alternate sources of raising funds. And alternate sources of raising funds are none other than the common people who have this increased money with them, which is in circulation. So all the financial instruments, they will be made attractive by increasing the rate of return on them. Financial instruments like fixed deposits or other investment instruments, policies. Earlier, let's suppose you were getting 4% rate of interest on them, they will be made attractive to 5%. Obviously, the increased rate on those, I would say, financial instruments will be less than the policy interest rate. But yes, they will be made more attractive than they were earlier. And people will see that this is becoming attractive. So, they will park their money in those financial instruments. As a result, money supply in the economy will reduce. As a result, demand will increase and inflation will reduce. This is the basic fundamentals behind this. How by increasing or adjusting policy interest rates, inflation can be tackled by central banks. And this is a universal phenomena. It is not only applicable to India, it is applicable everywhere. The US Federal Reserve does it, we do it, European Central Bank does it. So this needs to be understood. Now this also needs to be understood that what does this or how does this US hiking or reducing the interest rates impact on India? Now we'll create a situation when US Federal Reserve has increased the interest rates. This is just a situation, and this situation was real during the entire 2022 when inflationary pressures all over the world were high due to war, due to climate induced disasters. USA was also impacted. No country in the world was spared. And the entire year US Federal Reserve kept on hiking interest rates. Now, what were the implications on the Indian economy during that period when interest rates were hiked? Now, interest rates are hiked. Financial instruments in USA, they become attractive. People want to People would want to invest money into that. The citizens of USA will do that, but financial instruments also invite investments from across the country. Means foreign investors can also come and invest in these financial institutions. Okay. This is one leg which you need to understand. Now, coming to India, the impact on India. So we should understand one thing, that foreign investment coming into India is in two forms. One is FDI, foreign direct investment. It is that investment which is done in infrastructure, creating factories, setting up offices, generating jobs over here. That is FDI. Opening showrooms, creating physical infrastructure, generating jobs, doing business, taking the money like this. The other form of foreign investment is FII, foreign institutional investment, or foreign portfolio investment, FPI. This is that foreign investment which is done in the stocks, in the stock market. This is more volatile as compared to FDI, because these people who come and invest, if they are not finding it attractive over here, they can lift their money, go to some other place where the investment is attractive. Now coming back to our situation, when US Federal Reserve had hiked the interest rates, the financial instruments in US have become attractive. So these FIIs and FPIs, they will take their money out of India and invest it in USA. As a result, India is left with less dollars comparatively, which simply means that Indian rupee will start sliding. It will become weaker. Indian rupee becoming weaker will impact the imports. Imports will become expensive. However, it will benefit the exporters, but yes, there are less exporters in India as compared to importers. Now, impact on India in case of increased rates by Fed reserves. On Indian market, Fed's continuous rate hike does not augur well for emerging markets including India. You know now why doesn't it augur well. Now the increase in US interest rate results in an outflow of funds to US market because financial instruments over there become more attractive. Equity markets are likely to see increased volatility in the next few months because USA has hinted that it is going to increase the interest rates in the time to come, or it can increase. So we should be prepared for that. Now on the Indian rupee, outflow of the funds from Indian market will have an impact on the exchange rate of Indian rupee against the dollar. It will get weaker because India will be left with less dollars as compared to the earlier situation. The Indian rupee has been losing value against the dollar since early 2022. But thankfully this time, since the rates have been unchanged, so minimal impact or no impact should be there on the value of rupee due to this phenomenon. Other phenomena can impact the value of rupee, but due to this phenomenon, there will be no impact or minimal impact, I would say. High chances are no impact. A weaker rupee should help Indian exporters to some level. But since exports are less as compared to imports, overall exports are less because we are there in the current account deficit. So majorly it will impact the imports in case of that, in case of US Federal Reserve hiking the interest rate. And on this particular, I would say, concept, there was a question asked in this year's prelims. There has been questions asked on this concept earlier also. So you need to understand, you need to relate things in this way. So this is actually the first topic that is complete. Delimitation of constituencies. When we adopted our constitution in 1950, we became a democracy with universal adult franchise, which simply meant that all the adults of sound mind in our country have the right to vote. And the constitution makers also ensured that each vote counts, means the representation should be uniform. At that time, roughly 10 lakh people per representative, this was the formula. And in the constitution only, the constitution makers mentioned that after every census, the Delimitation Commission will be set up to adjust the boundaries of the constituencies, to increase the constituencies with the increasing population. And after that, there were three delimitation commissions, 1950s, 1960s and 1970s, which sat, which increased the number of seats also. But in the 1970s, when the Delimitation Commission sat, there was huge controversy. There were many states who were following the family planning norms and trying to limit the growth of population. Whereas on the other side, there were some states who were not following it. The population was growing rampantly in those states. So, since the constitution makers thought about this, that the number of seats should be in line with the population of that particular state. So, those states in which population was growing rapidly, not following the family planning norms, also were rewarded with increased number of seats in the parliament. Whereas those states on the other side who were following family planning norms, specifically the southern states, were punished with less number of seats for doing something which was actually the need of the hour, which was actually a good deed. So it was decided in 1976 that from now on we are freezing the number of seats in Lok Sabha to 543. And this freeze was till 2001. In 2001, the government again passed a law in which the government froze the seats till 2026. That is 25 years from then. Why 2026 was chosen? Because there was an inherent assumption by the government that with the current situation of the family planning programs we have, it will take another 25 years from now to make this birth rate is equal to death rate scenario. That is why 2026 was chosen. But population is growing. And we are underrepresented presently in the parliament. So we are thinking about increasing the number of seats in the parliament. Up to what extent it will increase, we'll have to see. But yes, the arrangements have been made. We have shifted to the new parliament building where there are more number of seats. We are planning to form a delimitation commission. We have tabled the Women's Reservation Bill also in the parliament. The Women's Reservation Bill, which happens to be the 128th Constitutional Amendment Bill, if passed, will become the 108th Constitutional Amendment Act, envisages to give 33% reservation to the women in the parliament and the state legislative assemblies. But the government who has tabled the bill has said that this bill will be passed now, but it will be applicable or it will be implemented not before 2029 at least. The government has said this because the government has said that first delimitation needs to happen. We need to adjust the constituencies. If the constituencies need to be increased in 2026, let us first increase it. And then we will identify that which constituency is reserved for females or not. And this actually will streamline the implementation of this Women Reservation Bill. However, on the other hand, the opposition is demanding immediate implementation of the Women Reservation Bill. So this is the controversy surrounding this Women Reservation Bill presently. Let's get into it. The Nari Shakti Vandan Adhiniyam is actually the Women's Reservation Bill, which is going to be the 128th Constitution Amendment Bill, and if passed, 108th Constitutional Amendment Act. This confusion should not be there because in our last video we referred to it as 108th Constitutional Amendment Act, and you should also know that it is 28th Constitutional Amendment Bill. Means it is 128th bill which is introduced in the parliament to amend the constitution. Actually, some bills do not get passed, and that is why the number of bills which get passed are less in number as compared to the bills. Here we have CAB, Constitutional Amendment Bill. It is, if it passed, it will become an act. that is 108 Constitutional Amendment Act it will be. So it will come into effect only after the delimitation of constituencies is done by a delimitation commission, and this delimitation will happen on the basis of the data of the latest census. The delimitation process will decide which constituency to be reserved for women. The bill says that it will be applicable after an exercise of delimitation is undertaken based on the data collected from the first census released after the passage of the bill. Now, after the passage of the bill, the first census is expected to be 2021 census, which is delayed. So it will be released or it will be out somewhere around 2025-26 only, when the Delimitation Commission has to set. So the Delimitation Commission can consider the data of that particular census, the delayed 2021 census, and implement this bill will be applicable after that only. So from 2029 onwards, this women reservation bill will be applicable according to this argument given by the center. Now, what is delimitation? We need to understand that also. Now, according to the Election Commission, the word delimitation is defined as the act or process of fixing limits, boundaries of territorial constituencies in a country or a province having a legislative body. In case of India, the legislative body of the center is Lok Sabha, and for that constituencies have to be drawn. So in the Indian context, the exercise of redrawing the boundaries of Lok Sabha and Legislative Assembly constituencies in a region is known as delimitation. Now in this process, the number of seats allocated to a particular state or UT in Lok Sabha or in the Legislative Assembly may vary. What does this mean? That a region, let's suppose Delhi is there. It will not be necessary that Delhi has the same number of seats in Lok Sabha and the same number of seats in the Delhi's Legislative Assembly. For example, Delhi in Lok Sabha has 7 seats. Means there are 7 constituencies in Delhi for Lok Sabha elections. Whereas for the Legislative Assembly elections, there are 70 seats, means there are 70 constituencies for that. So the size of the constituencies may vary for the parliamentary elections and the Legislative Assembly elections. Now the Parliament will pass or Parliament will form this Delimitation Commission only for deciding the constituencies of the Parliament. The state legislative assemblies are also empowered to form delimitation commissions which will decide the constituencies of that particular state. Now constitutional provisions for delimitation, Article 82 and Article 170. Article 82 empowers the central government, Article 170 empowers the state government. Parliament to readjust the allocations of seats in Lok Sabha. So Article 82 empowers the Parliament, Article 170 empowers the legislative assemblies of the states respectively to redraw the constituencies after every census it can happen. Accordingly, the Parliament enacts the Delimitation Commission Act and an independent high-powered panel known as the Delimitation Commission is formed to carry out the exercise of the Delimitation Commission. Now this Delimitation Commission comprises of multiple members, 3-4 members are there. They study the constituencies, the population. Actually, what happened? There is this population ratio. It is basically a ratio between the population and the constituencies in that particular state. This population ratio largely should be similar for all the states. Whichever state has more population will be given more constituencies in this case. And this was the major bone of contention between the southern states who were following family planning norms and the northern states who were not. They were being awarded by more number of constituencies as compared to the southern states. The Parliament has enacted the Delimitation Commission Acts in the following year, that is 1952, 1962, 72 and 2002. No act was enacted in 1980s, 1990s. The last Delimitation Act was enacted in 2002 only. Now there was no in these years. The present delimitation of constituencies has been done on the basis of 2001 census. But how it has been done, we will see. The next Delimitation Commission is expected to be set up in 2026. We know this. Article 330 and 332 of the Constitution, they also talk about giving reservation to the scheduled tribes and scheduled castes in the seats, and this is also according to their population. Okay. About Delimitation Commission, as I told you that this is the body which is responsible for carrying out this exercise. It is a high-powered committee entrusted with the task of drawing and redrawing the boundaries of different constituencies for state assemblies and Lok Sabha elections. Now, states will form their separate delimitation commissions because they are empowered according to Article 170, and the central government, is empowered according to Article 82. So, what is this Delimitation Commission? It is appointed by the President in case of the centre and works in collaboration with the Election Commission. The commission consists of a retired or a working Supreme Court judge as chairperson, election commissioner, concerned state election commissioners in case of the constituencies of that particular state. So, these three people will be there, and this is so empowered that any decision taken by this Delimitation Commission cannot be challenged in any court of law. Means the decision will be final. The delimitation exercises till now, as I told you that there have been largely three delimitation exercises, but the fourth was also there. How the fourth was there, we will see. The first delimitation in 1950s, it was post the 1951 census, increased the seats from 489 to 494. So, initially in our first parliament, the number of seats were 489. Delimitation in 1960s, post the 1961 census, increased the seats from 494 to 522 this time. Then in the 1970s, post the 1971 census, increased the seats from 522 to 543. And here the controversy erupted. The southern states, which were following the family planning norms stringently, were able to restrict the population growth in their respective states. But they were punished with less number of seats because seats or number of seats were tied with the population. Because we had to meet that population ratio, which was the ratio between the population and the constituencies. Whereas the northern states, where family planning programs were not implemented strictly, the population growth was very high over there, and the number of constituencies also kept on increasing over there. They got rewarded for that. So, this mismatch was there, and hence the Indira Gandhi government in 1976 decided that enough is enough. We are now not going to increase the number of seats from 1976 till 2001 at least. We will see in 2001 what to do. In 2001, the Atal Bihari Vajpayee government was there. They said that we are not increasing the seats. They formed this Delimitation Commission. They passed this Delimitation Commission Act in 2002, post the 2001 census, but said whatever the number of constituencies are there, they will remain the same, but yes, boundaries can be adjusted so that equal representation is there. Let's suppose in one constituency there is less population as compared to its neighboring constituency. So constituencies boundaries will be altered. Some of the people from this constituency will go in that constituency so that equal ratio is maintained. This happened in 2001. Number of seats did not increase. Boundaries were redrawn without seat increase in 2002. So these are there till now, and we said that in 2002 we said that till 2026 we are not going to increase the number of seats. We will be adjusting and readjusting the boundaries if needed, but number of seats we are not going to increase till 2026. So technically speaking, seats have been frozen since 1976, and minimum till 2026 they will be frozen. Let's see, the new parliament has more number of seats, so it may be a possibility that it increases. Population ratio has to be maintained uniform largely across the country. This has been the mandate, or this has been the norm, but this unintentionally implied that those states which were not undertaking family planning provisions strictly were getting incentivized with more number of seats, whereas those states which were taking family planning seriously were getting disincentivized or punished for something good they were doing, and hence number of seats were frozen in 1976. The Census of India. It is nothing but a population counting exercise. The first ever census was introduced by the Britishers in the year 1872. But first ever synchronized and full-scale census was carried out in 1881. And since then, it has been a decennial exercise, means once in 10 years it happens. Till now, there has been only one census in the history of India which has registered negative population growth, and that was the census of 1921. As an exception, apart from that census, population growth has been witnessed in almost all the census from 1881 till now, or 1872 till now, you can say. The findings of these census are very, very significant for us. It helps the government in designing policies. It helps in town planning. It helps in, giving reservations to various deprived sections of the society. It helps in delimitation, the constituencies drawing and redrawing. Multiple sets of data we get. So this exercise in itself is very important. The present census actually is the 2011 census. It had to be there in 2021, but due to COVID restrictions, it got delayed. And it is expected to be starting this year, the exercise to be started this year, and by 2025-26 it will be fully published. This simply means that the Delimitation Commission, which has to sit in 2025-26, can take data of this census, and if it considers the data of this census and wants to increase the number of seats in Lok Sabha, it can, and also it can accommodate 33% reservation for women amongst those seats. Which simply means that in 2029 general elections, women reservation will be there in Lok Sabha if things go smoothly from now. So let us look into it. Population census provides basic statistics on the state of human resources, demography, culture and economic structure. 1872 was the first census. 1881 was the first synchronized census or full-scale census. Now, who is responsible for census enumeration, census counting, publishing of this census data? It is the Registrar General and Census Commissioner of India. Ministry of Home Affairs is the ministry under which this Registrar General of India is there. And that is why our Home Minister was heard saying that before 2029, the Women Reservation Bill cannot be implemented. Because he knows that when the census will be released, he knows how delimitation is going to happen and how things are going to be made easy. Mention of census in the Constitution or any other law, it is first of all mentioned in as entry number 69 in the Union List of the 7th schedule in the Indian Constitution. Census is conducted under the provisions of the Census Act 1948. Process of census enumeration. Actually, there are two steps or two phases. First is house listing and housing census. It is just a survey of the houses, number of households, number of houses constructed and all. And after 6 to 8 months gap, the population enumeration is done. The population enumeration follows the housing census with a gap of 6 to 8 months. In this stage, population enumeration phase, each person is enumerated and asked various questions like age, marital status, religion, scheduled caste, scheduled tribe, mother tongue, education level, disability, economic activity, what that person does, migration, fertility for female. All these kind of data are collected from a single individual. And accordingly, there are various other indicators like sex ratio is enumerated from the census. Literacy rates are also known by the census, because these many things are asked from a single individual. The significance of the census. The census provides population data, characteristics, housing and amenities for every village and town. The house counting or housekeeping census. Framing government programs, validate or reject estimates of various sample surveys. We have to do that. Then the census data are used to determine the number of seats to be reserved for scheduled caste, scheduled tribes in the parliament and state legislatures, and determination of constituencies also. Here, delimitation of constituencies, here the data is used. In case of panchayats and municipal bodies, reservation of seats for scheduled castes, scheduled tribes is also done on the basis of the census. And it is also the basis for reviewing the country's progress in the past decade. What has been the population growth, what has been the housing type, what has been the levels of, I would say, education among the people, all these are also counted from there. Now, census and delimitation. The 2021 census could not be carried out due to COVID-19 pandemic. We know this by now. If the house listing exercise is carried out next year, that is the first type of, I would say, activity, the actual population enumeration can take place in 2025. That is the second phase. The publication of the first results will take at least 1 to 2 years from then onwards. Means 2026 is there. This means that delimitation need not wait for 2031 census. It can be based on this delayed 2021 census. If everything progresses smoothly, 2029 general elections can happen with increased number of seats, if they will increase it, and women reservation for 1/3 of the seats will be there. This is the counting, or this is, I would say, the calculation for that. Was this a well thought out plan of the central government? If yes, then I would say that there is vision in that. The opposition, on the other hand, is demanding immediate implementation of the women reservation bill, which actually will bring a lot of hassles. We'll have to form a delimitation commission. We'll have to identify from the existing constituencies which constituency should be a women constituency or a female constituency. It will be a big task for the political parties also. It is not easy actually. It is going to be a tedious task. So the government is actually going smoothly and taking a long-term decision. Now, if the seats are increased in 2026, does not mean that after the next census also we will be increasing the number of seats. Again, that cycle will start. The states which are following the family planning norms will be disincentivized or punished as compared to the states which are not following. So this increase in number of seats is going to happen once in a time only. And I think if it happens, it will happen in 2026. And with that number of increased seats, then give 33% women reservation. No, more women will be there. If it is done immediately, it will be, a move in haste, which may lead to a lot of administrative difficulties and failures also. So this should be understood by us. Anyways, this is it from today's session. I will be meeting you tomorrow with some more important and exciting news pieces. Till then, keep studying, keep reading, keep writing, and most importantly, keep revising. Jai Hind, Namaste.